1 Corinthians chapter 1, verses 18 through 31. For the message about the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved it is the power of God. For it is written, I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the discernment of the discerning I will thwart. Where is the one who is wise? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world? For since, in the wisdom of God, the world did not know God through wisdom, God decided, through the foolishness of our proclamation, to save those who believe. For Jews demand signs and Greeks desire wisdom, but we proclaim Christ crucified, a stumbling block to Jews and foolishness to Gentiles. But to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ the power of God and the wisdom of God. For God's foolishness is wiser than human wisdom, and God's weakness is stronger than human strengths. Consider your own call, brothers and sisters. Not many of you were wise by human standards. Not many of you were powerful. Not many of you were of noble birth. But God chose what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, things that are not, to reduce to nothing things that are, so that no one might boast in the presence of God. He is the source of your life in Christ Jesus, who became for us wisdom from God, and righteousness and sanctification and redemption, in order that, as it is written, let the one who boasts boast in the Lord.
Jews demand signs. Greeks look for wisdom. Jews demand signs, Greeks look for wisdom, or searching for wisdom. Corinth was originally a Greek city, and somewhere in the 140s BC, Rome got mad at Corinth and destroyed the city and leveled it. About 100 years later, somewhere in the 40s BC, Rome decided to reestablish a colony there in that spot because it was a really good spot. It's where a lot of different countries and places around the world, it was kind of a central port city. And so there was a lot of trade that went through that area. And so Rome decided to refound a city there. And what Rome did was they took a whole bunch of their poor and their freed slaves and the really lower class, the lowest class that they could. They rounded up a whole bunch of them, put them on boats, and they shipped them off to Corinth and settled them there as a colony. And so Rome then reestablished Corinth as a Roman colony full of freed slaves, very poor people, and retired military, retired soldiers. And then the city grew and developed and became stronger and bigger and more powerful and more important to the region. Corinth becomes a major city. Sometime in the 50s or so, there was a lot of controversy going on in Rome or in Jerusalem, and in fact, it was part of Paul's doing that caused this originally when he was Saul. This was part of that original early church as they started becoming, the early Christian churches, they becoming more and more prevalent in Jerusalem. They became more and more hated, more and more disliked by the Jews that lived there. And so eventually a lot of the Christian Jews were just driven out. And a lot of them settled in Corinth. There was a whole group of Christian Jews that moved or were exiled and ended up in Corinth. And they joined the Greek Christians that were there, these Gentile Christians that were there. But we'd have to remember, though, that these Jewish Christians, they come from Jerusalem. And under Brother James there, they were taught that in order to become, or what was really kind of professed at the time was that in order to become a Christian, you first had to be a Jew. And so that was a controversy. That was part of the issue that was happening in Corinth. That was part of what Paul was writing about. In fact, this isn't the only place that this particular issue came up. We'll find Paul speaking about these issues in Galatians, in Corinthians, in Thessalonians, you name the book, you name the city, the city titled letter, and you'll find that these were parts of the issue. There were actually 3 issues in Corinth at this time. One of them had to do with how they got their meat, and who was allowed to eat this meat, and what kind of meat it was, and where was it purchased from. Almost all meat in Corinth had cycled through the temples, and so almost any meat you got in Corinth had been sacrificed to idols. And so when you went to the market, you were buying meat that had processed through the temples and then been given to the markets to be sold. And so this was, no matter what kind of meat you were buying meat that had been sacrificed to idols. This was an issue in this church because there was a group of people in this church that said eating meat sacrificed to idols was actually honoring the God, that false god that meat was sacrificed to. So that was an issue. But they had an even bigger issue. The bigger issue, the one that really, and this is the one that Paul speaks about most often in his writing, is there was an issue between the Jewish Christians who believed that you had to be a Jew before you could become a Christian, and the Gentile Christians who had become Christians, but didn't meet the need or the criteria or the standard or the demand that the Jewish Christians wanted. What did they want? They wanted these Gentiles to be circumcised so they could be part of the Jewish community, and then they could become Christians. That's what the issue was. And now Paul comes into the story in this, and he does not take sides in this. He's not even an arbitrator in this. He doesn't act to say, okay, what's your issue? How can we deal with that? And what's your issue? How can we deal with it? He doesn't do that. He says, he doesn't come in and try to deal with their issues in that way. What he does is he comes in and he says, here is what it is. Here is the truth. What it boils down to in a lot of ways is, well, here, let me put it a different way. Each one of us, as we're building our faith, as we're building our understanding of our relationship with God, as we build this, we each one are making our own bricks of faith, our own bricks of truth. And we take mud and we put it in the frame and we put in some straw and we mix it and we make sure that it's built into this frame and we let it harden and dry. That particular thing that we say, this is important to us as a Christian. And we build that little brick. We take that brick and we put it down and we build another brick out of our own personal beliefs and understandings about how God works, and we build another brick of gospel or another brick of faith. We put it next to the first, and then we keep building these bricks. And eventually we end up with a wall. But then as we continue to build bricks, we build sides and a back, and we end up with a square. And then we keep adding bricks, we keep adding to our faith, and eventually, as we're building our tower to heaven, we're building our own understanding of what God is like and how God should treat each of us. That isn't necessarily a good thing. When we build our building, our tower of Babel to heaven, we are building it out of our own understanding, our own desires, our own needs, our own selves. And Paul comes into this story and says, no, that's not how it works. You Jews over here who want these poor Greeks to be circumcised, no, you have to be circumcised. You're Jews. You're Jewish Christians. You have to follow those rules. Yes, you have to follow those rules. In fact, you have to follow all 613 laws out of the Old Testament. That's what Paul tells them. You have to follow those rules. But you cannot demand that of these Gentiles. The Greeks don't have to do that. In fact, the Greeks, all they have to do is be baptized and say, I love God and I love my neighbor. Jews didn't like that because they're still stuck with those 600 rules. Plus, they have to do the 2 that Jesus said. So now they have 615 rules that they have to follow, and the Gentiles only have to follow 2. 2 rules. Paul says the 2 rules that you Gentiles have to follow is love God, love your neighbor. And you Gentile, you Jews, you have to follow all 613 rules. That includes things about oxen and food and what you can wear and what kind of materials you can make your clothes out of. And you have to follow those 2 rules. Love God, love your neighbor. But then Paul goes on and rewards them by telling them, though, if you live by love God, love your neighbor, those other rules just kind of fall into place. They're just there already. You have resolved that. By loving God, loving your neighbor, you're answering all those rules, all those laws. Don't demand this of them. Why are you putting stumbling blocks in front of them? You're creating bricks. You're creating bricks of faith or bricks of gospel or bricks of belief, and you're putting them in front of others to trip over. Stop making stumbling blocks. Stop worrying about what your brother is doing or how he lives or how he dies. It matters not. Stop looking at it. In a couple of months, May, we're going to have one of these moments. We're going to have one of those moments. Not here in this church, but in the church whole. This is not something new. I want you to know that. This is not something new. This happens every 50 to 100 to 200 years. This sort of thing happens. Where we have to re-look at our faith, re-look at our gospel, re-look at our understanding of how it means to be a child of God, and decide whether we need to change it. To look at it again, alter how we view our society, our culture, our life together. And that's what's going to happen. Happens about every couple of 100 years or so. We really have a major shift. We had the break between the Orthodox and the Catholic Church over silly things, over stained glass windows, whether Jesus is from God or part of God, not God, what? There's a split. There was a split later between the Catholics and the Anglicans. Church of England split off and became Church of England and Episcopal Church in the United States. A little while later, another branch broke off because they didn't fit in with that. We become Methodists. That's us. And along in there also the Lutherans break away. And we have all of these different breakaways. I believe this. You don't believe that. And so let's break away. Let's separate. And you continue to believe your way, and we're going to live our way, and that's the way it'll be. We're going to have another one of those in May. But I want to reassure you, this congregation, this group of body, this body of people, that it's not going to affect you. It's not going to change a single thing about how this church operates, about what we do or don't do. It will make absolutely no difference to us. And I want to reassure you and calm and make sure you understand that. There is no fear here. There's nothing to worry about. No matter how that vote happens in May, when the international church gets back together again and we make that decision, or they make that decision for us, it will have absolutely no effect on us unless we choose to have an effect on us. Just like the church in Corinth, they're faced with one of these moments where they have to decide whether they want to let this thing affect them or let it go and just be part of each other. And that's what Paul is encouraging them to do. All through this, don't be looking at what these things are that makes us different. Instead, let's find those things that make us the same. Let's find that Christ moment in our lives where we join in this great faith that we have. Let's find those times where we are in agreement with each other in our faith, in our belief, in our understanding of God's love. That's what we're facing. And I'm not worried. I'm not worried in the least. No matter how it comes out, I'm not worried. Because it will not change us. And I'm grateful for that. And I'm thankful for God for this that we have